welcome to the Policy Development Committee meeting of February 4th, 2025. My name is Briar Allison, Deputy Clerk, and I will be opening this meeting and proceeding with the election of Chair and Vice Chair. Are there any nominations for the role of Chair? Councillor Chambers.
Prior to that, I'll move that we suspend Rule 94 of the Procedure Bylaw as it relates to electing a Chair and Vice Chair for this committee.
Appreciate it. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Pierce, all those in favor? Carried. And with that, do we have any nominations for the role of Chair? Councillor Garneau?
I'll nominate Councillor Coleman.
Councillor Coleman, do you accept? Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Oakley? Okay, then are there any nominations? Mayor Bailey?
No, I'll make a motion to close the nominations.
Okay, thank you. Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, and that's carried unanimously. Councillor Coleman, will you please join me at the head of the horseshoe? We'll just proceed with Vice Chair. Are there any nominations for the role of Vice Chair? Councillor Kyle.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Oakley.
Councillor Oakley, do you accept?
Yes, I do.
Seconder? Councillor Bell? Any other nominations? Oh, sorry, Councillor Miller. Go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Garneau.
Councillor Garneau, do you accept?
I accept.
Okay. So with that, I think we'll just call a quick recess so I can put together the ballots, and we will proceed in about 5 minutes. You accepted the nominations, Councillor Garneau. Sorry, do I have a seconder for that? Mayor Bailey. And all those in favor. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And I'll pass it over to you, Councillor Coleman, as the Chair.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Welcome, everybody. Approval of the agenda. Any additions? Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, just one quick thing to add under other business.
Okay. Anything else? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another item under other business as well.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, all those in favor of the agenda? Anybody have a peculiar interest to declare at the appropriate time? We have a public meeting to present a notice for consideration for the engineer's drainage report for the Rathburn Municipal Drain. And who is present here to do that? Trevor, you're online.
Yeah, I believe that's where I step in. Perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Trevor Kipfer. I'm with Streamline Engineering. We're based out of Milverton, Ontario. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and providing services for the County of Brant. So we were appointed this past December to provide for a minor improvement to the Rathbun Municipal Drain on Lot 11, Concession 7, just to the west of Burford. The main purpose of the project was to relocate an existing municipal drain to avoid existing and proposed buildings and infrastructure on a designated property. I'm not sure if I'm able to share my screen. I might give that just a quick try. Hopefully everybody can see that on their end. But just to clarify, so essentially the drain relocation, if you follow my cursor, there's this white line showing the existing Rathbun drain on Lot 11, Concession 7, and we're proposing to relocate it to this where this red line is, closer to the property line. So that'll give you a little bit more of an image for what's going on. So we had some consultation with the property owner and the county's drainage superintendent, and the final proposed design for the project included relocating the existing system with 301 meters of 12-inch drain tile and one concrete structure. The total estimated project cost was $56,500. Of that, construction is estimated at $40,300. In administration, including the prep the engineer's report, tendering and construction review, printing fees, and an HST of $16,200. With this project being a minor drain improvement, all the costs are associated with the property that it is located on. So all the costs are assessed to the agricultural property owner. With the total assessment being that $56,500, but we're also expecting an $18,800 OMAB for a grant for financial support for the project. And that's essentially a summary of the project. Thank you very much.
Questions for the engineer? Councilor Chambers?
Just some questions with regarding the nutrient management and the manure lagoons, et cetera. How does that, are there setback requirements for a municipal drain, or how does that resolve itself? Because this drain eventually goes into Whiteman's Creek.
Right. So the work that we're looking at doing, so all the entire system is going to be buried. So there's no locations on this particular property where there be an actual surface inlet, at least with the work that we'd be looking at doing. It's typically on the onus of the landowner. Obviously, we've all got responsibilities to make sure that no dirty water, polluted water is getting into the drain. So that's obviously the onus of that would be on the landowner.
Just a comment from my, it can't be any worse because the drain existing right now goes right under the right through the one of the barns. So.
Right. So this property owner is looking at expanding their operations on that property there. So the idea would be to get that existing system. So it's offset further away from the barns and whatnot. So.
Councilor Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So kind of along the same lines as Councilor Chambers, just the water quality. First question is, how do you guarantee that the water? Can you explain to me how you guarantee that the water doesn't go down the old drain, or do you totally block that off? How does that work?
So typically, the main for this particular property, any connections into the drain system would be subsurface tiles. So most of the water getting into it would be, it would have to infiltrate through the ground and then eventually gets into your subsurface system, which ultimately gets to the drain. In typical farming practice, if somebody's spreading manure on their property, if you do have large rainfall events and timing with that, the water is going to run off, and obviously the farmers have their they have to make sure they're doing things in a responsible manner to mitigate that risk, kind of thing. But as far as the municipal drain is concerned, and what we're doing here, the only opportunity for the water to get into the drain on this property would be through an underground tile system. So,
okay, so you don't actually block it off then, the old drain.
So the old drain would be it's going to be partially destroyed, but there will be some spots where. So typically, what we do with these old drains is there might be rainwater leaders from rooftops, kind of thing. We do still need to connect that into the drain. We can't just have any of that water getting stuck in not getting through the roofs of those buildings and whatnot. So we do still connect in that existing system. But the onus is still on the property owners to ensure that they're obviously not putting contaminants into the drainage system, and that would be something that would have to be managed. If there was suspicion that something like that could be happening, that would be on the an investigation to check and make sure that could be rectified. But yeah, certainly you can't just do that.
Sorry, further question there, Mr. Chair. An investigation by whom?
So it would typically, municipal drainage systems are managed by, in this case, the county. So if there was concerns from the landowners, it would be up to them to bring it up to the county. And my thought would be, if the drainage superintendent were to go out and if they were to see something that seemed, yeah, certainly if there was pollution going on or something that would be, something that needs further action, then they'd have to determine an appropriate course of action at that time.
Thank you.
Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to Trevor. So this one is a little bit of a conundrum with the drain running underneath the barn. So I guess I'm just wondering what determines what's a minor adjustment versus something major? Because this one, like I find it hard to believe that the barn was built on top of the drain and no one knew it was there. We just have gone through a barn build at our place, so I know how deep they dig. So are we certain that that is where the existing drain is, or does it matter if you're decommissioning it? Or I'm curious as to if this drain is actually where the map says it is, based on the barn being on top of it.
Yeah, to our knowledge, it appears that the drain is very close to being, actually there's one grain bin there as well as the barn. To our knowledge, it looks as though the drain is, if not under, very close to being under. And then as well, where they're proposing on constructing another barn, the drain is also in that route as well. So yeah, hopefully that covers that question. Maybe just going back, you asked what determines if a drain improvement is a minor improvement, and the main factors for that are the work needs to take place on one property, and then no changes to the capacity of the system are being made. So the work that we're looking at doing, we're maintaining the drainage capacity that was there in that existing case, kind of thing. So that's what differentiates between the minor improvement and a major drain improvement. Sorry. Hopefully that answered your questions, but I'm happy to clarify if I missed anything there.
Any more questions for the engineer? Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question of curiosity, Trevor. The junction box detail shows two lines going into the junction box and one going out. Is there another drain somewhere on the property that goes into that junction box that we don't see on the aerial view?
Right, so the two drains going into that box would be the new drain that we're constructing. So that's the main one, and that's going to be the main source of flow. We'd also be connecting in that existing Rathbun drain. And again, the reason for that is we don't want to cause a potential conflict in the future if we were to cut that drain off totally. If there was some systems flowing into it, we don't want those systems to be totally cut off. We still want that stormwater to be able to move. This downstream, you're correct, there is only one tile coming out, and that tile is the existing Rathbun drain downstream. So yes, you are correct, there are two systems going in, but only one going out.
Okay, clear as mud. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Sorry, last question. I was going to ask this before. Through you to Trevor. Trevor, we've had this discussion around this table already. Can you confirm that it's a Rathbun drain and not a Rathburn municipal drain? Because the previous owner was Rathburn. So.
Based on the paperwork we've seen, it is the Rathbun drain. That is what we've seen in the previous engineer's report for that system. So.
Councillor Chambers.
Mr. Chairman, I can clarify that once and for all. At the last meeting, I said it was the Rathburn drain. I stand corrected. Niles Rathbun is buried in the Harley Cemetery, and if you look at his tombstone, it is B-U-N, no R. And he owned the farm next to this farm, which used to be my grandfather's farm. That's how I know.
Thank you for that clarification. Any more questions from council? At this time, I will open it up to the floor. I will call 3 times for anybody in the audience that want to speak to this, to and fro. Calling the first time. Calling the second time. Calling the third time. Thank you. This time I will close the public meeting, and there is a recommendation. How would you like to deal with it? Counselor Garneau,
Move the staff recommendation.
thank you. Seconder, Counselor, Mr. Mayor. Any questions? All those in favor? Carried. Counselor Garneau, seconder. Counselor McAlpine. Jessica?
Good evening, Chair and members of committee. Staff are here this evening to present a draft backyard hen bylaw, proposed draft amendments to the county's zoning bylaw and the animal control bylaw as well, a draft licensing application, and a recommended program fee to support the Chickens in Residential Areas project. Draft items being presented this evening reflect committee direction received back in March of 2024 to only allow chickens in the non-urban residential zones of the county subject to regulations, licensing, and property inspection. To clarify where a backyard hen program, if implemented, would take place in the county, staff have prepared mapping to illustrate those areas that would be eligible if approved. So up on the screen here is the mapping to assist with that. So non-urban residential zones include areas outside of Paris and St. George that are not zoned agricultural. So these include the suburban residential SR zones, residential hamlets and villages RH, as well as the rural residential zones.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt. Can we get that on our screens here as well? Okay, thanks, Gary. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'll continue and then we can chat about the map later if we need to. Over the past several months, staff have collaborated with various internal departments as well as external agencies such as the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Agribusiness, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Cambium Inc., as well as the Grand Erie Public Health, formerly Brake County Public Health Unit, to develop the draft bylaw. This bylaw aims to address biosecurity, animal welfare, and the protection of drinking water, among other concerns. Presenting these draft items and the proposed program fee to the committee this evening is an essential step in moving the program forward. Council approval will be required for a backyard hen program to take effect. If approved by council at the end of this month, a backyard hen program could be implemented in the county in the non-urban residential zones by spring of this year. With that, I would like to thank the committee for hearing this item this evening and for your consideration on this project, and we look forward to any discussions this evening or questions the committee may have. With me this evening is Andrea Bizarre, Director of Environmental Services for the county, Greg Bergeron, Director of Enforcement and Regulatory Services for the county, Dr. Locke, and Philip Paiton-Giev from Grand Erie Public Health, as well as Zachary Lehman, the county's risk management official from Cambium Inc. And we are happy to try and answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Councilor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Jessica. First, thank you for all the work you've put into this. I'm sure you've learned more about chickens than you ever thought possible in your career. And I'm trying to look at this from the I'm trying to simplify this from the perspective of residents, and I appreciate the map. So if someone goes onto the county website and just puts chickens in the search engine, they will learn the rules, learn the procedure of being evaluated or inspected, and they'll find the map. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor House. So that is correct. Currently, we have a project page on Engage Grant that offers a link to county mapping, which assists in identifying zoning on properties. So folks can type in an address and quickly identify what zone category their particular property is or a property of interest might be. As far as next steps, if a program were to be approved by council, we would be working with the communications team as well as bylaw enforcement to set up a permanent page on the county's website dedicated to the Backyard Hen program, which would house the link to the mapping as well as all regulations if approved. It would essentially be a one-stop shop page for folks to figure out all of the information they need.
Great answer. Thank you. A quick follow-up through the chair, if that's okay. Would it be fair to summarize, if we give this a final go-ahead, that compared to 2 years ago, there will be more addresses within the county of Brant that can have chickens compared to 2 years ago? Like we've it seems to me that there were some gray areas before, and even though we're not allowing backyard chickens within residential areas, there were some gray areas before that it was not clear. Those are now clear, and they can have backyard chickens. Is that too simplified of a statement?
Through the chair to Councillor House. So I'll try and build on that and kind of give some clarity to that question. So with permissions, particularly only applying to the non-urban residential areas, you are correct. So those would be areas outside of Paris and St. George. Paris and St. George, that zoning is urban residential. So this particular program will relate to areas that are outside of Paris and St. George and otherwise not zoned agricultural. So they would have to be one of the 3 zoning classifications in the non-urban residential zone category, being the suburban residential zone, residential hamlets and villages, or rural residential. And again, those can be found in the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the County of Brant, 6116. We do have that information available on the website, and staff are available to assist.
Lucas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. I'm curious in regards to the licensing structure that we've chosen here. Why we're going with a one-time fee versus a reoccurring fee. Looking through the comparators, it appears most or at least a significant number are reoccurring fees. So I'm curious as to why we've chosen to go that route. Obviously, I have no problem with us reoccurring or recovering costs on this. This certainly isn't a program we should be subsidizing by any way, shape, or form. As we've discussed before, this is more or less a luxury good to have with all the requirements. So I'm just curious as to why it's not a reoccurring fee, like, for example, a dog license.
Through the chair to Councillor Oakley, I would like to at this time invite up Greg Bergeron to help answer that question.
Through the chair to Councillor Oakley, the thought was that we wanted to have more of a barrier-free program where it was a one-time licensing as opposed to having annual licensing. I think when you put a cost to something, we kind of run the risk of not having people coming forward to get licensed. That was the thought. Certainly something that we can reconsider at council's will, but that's where we're coming from on that angle.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to either work and answer this. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go back in time here to October 2023 when the original decision was made to allow chickens everywhere. There was some more thought. There was some more investigation done on it. A year later, we came back. Maybe not the greatest idea. And then the new proposal was as it is now in the non-urban areas. Are we sure that this is where we want to go, or have we done more investigation and we think maybe that it's not a good idea? I'm curious.
Through the chair to Councillor Pierce. So in terms of a backyard hen program, through analysis, And with regards to higher level policies such as the PPS and the County of Brant's new official plan, these areas form part of the county's agricultural land base and agricultural land system. So in the evaluation of where most appropriate to potentially allow chickens in residential areas, these areas are probably the most appropriate because they are directly typically adjacent to the agriculturally zoned properties that typically have livestock on them. They're also larger in size, so they allow more room for compatibility issues and concerns to be addressed. So in staff's opinion, through the analysis, it's not inappropriate to consider a backyard hen program in these specific residential areas.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. One more for good, Mr. Chair. And Greg, we had this conversation when the original one was brought up in the sense of it may entail a lot more work for your staff. Have we rethought that? Do we still think that we're going to be able to handle this, or do we think there's going to be an influx of calls? Have we, the other regions around, have we had any discussions with those? Was it an initial burst of calls and then people kind of settled down? Do we have any idea of what we're anticipating?
Through the chair. So I think we're anticipating, probably an influx of calls at the beginning. In speaking to adjacent municipalities, I mean, it's something that we certainly feel that we can absorb. Last discussions that we had with the city of Brantford, I think they had 50 licensees in the city proper. So we're prepared. Again, we have a lot of projects going on, as mentioned in the report. So there may be like a cumulative effect, with all the other projects. But certainly, I think that we have the staff on hand that can take care of this project. We do have a licensing officer who's dedicated to specific to licensing. So I do think that we can absorb this.
Okay, thank you,
Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm reading in the report, it'll be monitored over the next 3 years. For enforcement, sounds like it's going to be looked at by Greg's team, and that's great. My concern is who's looking at the biohazards, if there are any. And I'm south of the border at the moment, and all I hear about is just millions of chickens being slaughtered right now. And there's an egg shortage in many parts of the states, and because of the bird flu. And I know when you go to a commercial poultry operation, they have certain things they do to prevent any the risk from disease. Obviously controlling access to the barns, and when you do go in, you got to put your feet in the insecticide or whatever they have out front. So my question then is anybody from staff or the county going to be monitoring for disease to see if there is an increase, or are we going to leave that up to the associated agricultural groups that monitor for this?
Through the chair to Councilor Miller. So we've had these discussions. Obviously, they're top of mind for us. The landscape has changed, obviously, since this project started. We will be working collaboratively with the Brant County Health Unit, certainly to make sure that if there are any outbreaks reported, we're going to report that to them immediately. As far as biosecurity, I mean, that's a tough one to enforce. I think, the onus really falls upon the licensee to report any issues. We can't be around to police, these chickens 24/7. Even if we had, a licensing scheme where we would inspect once a year, I mean, you're just taking a snapshot in time, really, and then you have, another 364 days where really the onus should be on, the licensee. So that's kind of the approach we're going to take. We're certainly going to, respond to complaints, and any information that we have, we'll certainly follow up. Biosecurity is something that's going to be promoted, but again, I just want to reiterate, like, for people that are going to apply, they're going to go through the hoops to, get a license. We certainly think that they're going to be responsible owners, and that's basically our approach.
Thank you. What I was concerned about is that if we have to start killing the flocks in the county because we get the bird flu. I don't know if you could link it back to backyard chickens, but it's something I know I would be very concerned about at this point. But okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. Not so much questions, but more some comments. And I really appreciate the work that you've put into that. And to kind of speak to some of Councillor Miller's concerns, for me, as someone who works in the livestock sector, and we're currently working through a lot of our crisis management, one thing that this does provide is contact information. And that's something that we really struggle with in the beef sector, for example, because we don't have any specific licensing like you would in dairy or poultry. So I really like that you have included in here a mandatory registration with Chicken Farmers of Ontario, because that automatically puts those folks into the system so that they will receive information if there is an outbreak and they are located within the radius that there needs to be some control zones or that type of thing. So I really appreciate that from the biosecurity perspective. I know that it's still not perfect and enforcing it can be a huge challenge, but just the fact that we will know where some of these chickens are and have a mechanism to contact them is, or the people, not the chickens, I suppose, but we'll have a mechanism to contact those owners to hopefully make sure people are following protocols if and when the situation arises.
Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my question was actually answered by Councillor Cowley. I was going to ask whether or not we were able to connect the regulatory industry with these owners in the event of avian flu, and the answer is yes. So my question's been answered. Thank you.
Any more questions, Council? I want to ask again, because this has been a very contentious issue over the past 2 years. So, any more questions for Council? There is a recommendation is on the floor. All those in favor? Oh, yeah. Public meeting, sorry. Gonna call this a public meeting. Anybody in the audience want to say anything? Calling for the first time. Don't all speak at once. Calling a second time. Calling a third time. Close the public meeting. Back to council. Everybody ready to vote? Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chair, I'd like the clerk to read what we're voting on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is as follows. Whereas on September 3rd, 2024, Council directed county staff to permit chickens only in non-urban residential areas and create an implementation framework to be presented to Council for approval. And whereas an amendment to the County of Brant Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 6116 is necessary and the amendment conforms with the Provincial Planning Statement 2024 and policies of the county's 2023 official plan to facilitate implementation of a new backyard hen program. Therefore, that committee receive RPT 0002-25 chickens in residential areas, implementation and next steps as information, and that the required county-initiated amendments to the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 6116, ZBA 26-24-JK Attachment 1, and Animal Control Bylaw 174-10 Attachment 2, and the new Backyard Hen Bylaw Attachment 4 be referred to Council for approval. And that the program application attachment 5 be endorsed and an amendment to the county's fees and charges bylaw be referred to council for approval, and that county staff be directed to work with the county's communications team to implement the new backyard hen program within the county as outlined within this report, and that enforcement and regulatory services and policy planning staff be directed to monitor the program over a 3-year period to assess participation and identify opportunities for improvement, and report back to council on the program and any recommended amendments to the bylaw in 3 years from the date of the program initiation.
You've heard it all. Councillor Chambers.
Just a comment, I will be supporting the recommendation. Originally, I wasn't too keen on having chickens in the dispersed throughout the towns, et cetera, because of the biodiversity and because of the avian flu situation, that kind of thing. But it would seem to me by this program, the urban chickens are going to be very, very well regulated, and accounted for, as opposed to every other Tom, Dick, and Harry like myself that lives in the agricultural areas, which are vastly geographically more than the urban areas that have chickens. And I'm not regulated by the 7 chickens that I have, and I'm probably at a bigger risk to the commercial operations than some poor 4 regulated chickens in Harley, for example. So I will support it because actually it may be better regulated than it was before.
Any more comments? You good, Councilor Miller? Good. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Noted 1. Thank you. Moving on. Adoption of minutes from November 5th, 2024. Moved by Mr. Mayor, seconder. Councilor Oakley. All those in favor? Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, consent items 8.1 to be approved. Parental leave policy for counselors. There is a recommendation. Moved by Councilor Oakley, seconded by Councilor Kyle. Just questions. Councilor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. Not really a question, more of a comment. Some might be wondering where this came from. And no, there is no announcement of any kind. But someone did reach out to me from another municipality, a former councillor from, I believe it was Oshawa. And she was following up because of some policy changes that were made several years ago, and all of the municipalities were supposed to have something in place to make things easier for councillors if they so chose to have a parental or pregnancy leave. So that's where that came from. She was just following up with municipalities to see who had done it and who hadn't. And I checked in with staff, and that's why it's coming forward. So it's more housekeeping, I think, than anything.
Any more questions? Call the question. All those in favor? 8.12, policy to prohibit complimentary facility rentals in recognition of donations to capital fundraising campaigns in the county. There is a recommendation. Moved by Councilor Pierce, second by Councilor Bell. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Did you, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, and I've talked to staff in the past, but that in some cases there is some volunteer organizations that have passed things, and that they're still going to be continued in this current policy. They're going to be grandfathered.
Stacy, do you want to answer that? Leslie? Can you hear me, Leslie?
Yes, Councilor Coleman, I can hear you. Sorry, I wasn't certain if Stacy was at podium or not. Happy to answer the question, though. Councilor McAlpoint, you've made reference to our service clubs. Is that correct?
Yeah, just the current ones that have an agreement with the county to use the facilities, that they're going to be grandfathered under this new contract, this new policy.
So certainly, as through the chair to Councilor McAlpine, certainly through our community partners policy that was passed in December, service clubs will continue to have access to facilities in accordance with that policy.
Okay, and so they are grandfathered then. So,
any more questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. 8.13, volunteer management policy. There is a recommendation. Somebody want to move it? Moved by Councilor Oakley. Second by Councilor Kyle. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? (8.2) Major project dashboard. There is a recommendation. Somebody put on the floor. Moved by Councilor Pierce, Mr. Mayor, seconded. Discussion. Councilor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. So a couple things. First of all, I think this is going to be great. It's going to be information that's out there, not only for us, but you know, hopefully potentially for the public as well, that we can see not real time, but as to what's happening across the county, if there's any delays, that sort of thing. So I think it's going to be great. Now, a couple of questions that I do have with it, and again, so, and Allison, you and I have had this discussion before, and I don't want to underestimate the time that it would take for updates and stuff like that, but I'm looking for something more than quarterly. Again, if nothing's changing, that's fine. But we've had a few instances over the last year with construction projects where things were halted and stuff like that. I think it's prudent that, especially with what's going to be going on in the next couple of years, that that we at least, if we can color code it to red and put a quick explanation or something like that. I think, like I say, the information is going to be fantastic, but I can see it, every quarter like that. A lot could happen in that time frame. And again, I don't want to underestimate the time it would take for an update. I'm just thinking that, we've asked before about something in a Friday file. Maybe I would even forego something in a Friday file to have this updated, because then they're only updating it in one spot. And I think if we're going to have something like this, we need to have as current information as we can. Like I say, I think this is going to be great, but I'm hoping we can do something a little bit better than quarterly.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'll say if there was something unexpected or sudden that happened, certainly we would still use other mechanisms to communicate with the public and with council, either through a Friday file or direct email. But in terms of regular updates, I agree. I would like to get us to a monthly update. Staff have been concentrating on getting the framework rolled out. This is still new, and I recognize that it's only as good as the information that we get into it. So we have had some discussions at SMT. I think we're going to have talks within the departments in terms of who's going to sort of own the updates. Right now, it's been falling to corporate strategy because they created this dashboard, but they're a very small group. There's only 2 of them there, so I agree. I think we want to move to a more frequent update on this. Monthly would be the target unless something large comes up. So we can update at the next quarterly report that you get on where we are with getting that on a more regular basis.
Okay, perfect. And as I say, I love the fact that it's going to be color coded so people can see, green is good, yellow there might be some delays, red. The one question I have is, this is in the report, it talks about major things that are happening. Is that based on size or dollar? Like, are we thinking, 500,000 up or 250 to 500? I'm just wondering if we could have, is it possible to have different categories than that, or we're not worried about I don't want to say the low hanging fruit, but is something, $100,000 or that, is it worth reporting on something like this? I'm not sure if we could do something different. I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, we've had a lot of discussion about this because major projects, it's somewhat subjective, and I was a little hesitant to frame this by project cost, because that doesn't always capture the projects which resonate the most or the most important to the community. There are certainly smaller projects that people are very interested in. They want to make sure they get a lot of questions about that sort of thing. So the direction to staff right now is, and I recognize this is a bit loose, is obviously if it's a major capital project by cost, but also if it's generating significant interest amongst the public. And we generally know that when we start to do public consultation, how much interest it's generating. So we're trying to capture those. I would also note that as these are coming to council, if there's something on there that you're getting a lot of questions about and it's for some reason not captured, we can certainly add it on. But right now, again, we're sort of leaving some discretion to departments to add in some maybe lower cost projects. Again, if they're generating a lot of interest or impact to the community.
Perfect. No, again, like I said, I think this is going to be a great thing, and I look forward to being able to get it out there publicly. Thank you for all the work.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Alison. I too like this. I noticed some big projects that are not there, surprisingly. And I'm conscious that we have gone through Engaged Brant with a few of them, and I would expect then that we'd see them on here as well. So just as an example, the Paris Water Treatment Plant, which some of us went to the open house the other night, probably the biggest project we're ever going to do, would expect to see it there. Next step in helping people to use this is if we could link it back to the Engage Brant page, because the Engage Brant page is really good in the sense it has a lot of the historical reporting, has the latest news on the project as well. So I think it can be done with just a link in the system. I don't think it requires an awful lot of work. What do you call it? A hyperlink. John's giving me the right technology here. A hyperlink. That would do really well. Thank you.
Any more questions? My only comment is I really do miss the old status reports we used to have at Public Works, and we had it every month. And you knew exactly pretty well where the projects were. And I think I'd rather have more than less, no matter what size the project is. Any more questions? Comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Staff reports, community engagement framework and policy. There is a recommendation. Moved by Councillor Kyle, second by Councillor McAlpine. Questions? Councillor Pearson.
Comment if I could, Mr. Chair?
You certainly can.
Thank you, and I appreciate in the report here where it says we're moving away from the we'll call it the town hall aspect of it, like in the sense that you know, how many times have we had, you know, public information meetings and stuff like that on what we think is our big things, and we've put the word out, and then we get 20 people, 30 people there. So I think the way to go about this, about the the smaller workshops and stuff like that, I'm hoping that this generates more public interest. Hopefully it will, because with some of the workshops maybe they can be engaged a little bit more. I'm not sure. But I think it was it was time to pivot, and I think this is the direction we're going here. So I appreciate the thinking out of the box and pivoting from something that unfortunately, other than the staff time and stuff that goes in there, very few people are benefiting from the time spent on all the information that we have out there now. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll say I did not author this report, but I do appreciate that there are some people who still really like the town hall formats. Part of the problem that we've run into in the past is that it can be very intimidating for people at the same time. So you tend to hear a lot of the same voices, but not enough. So it's not that we can't do town halls, but we would format them a little bit differently. So there may be sort of a larger group where we do some presentation, actually push information out, but then have breakout sort of tables or sessions in the same room where people can, sit and ask questions and discuss some things with staff and the experts there. Again, just going away from an environment that can be sometimes contentious and ramp up and be intimidating for some people to speak up. So I just wanted to clarify that we're not trying to not have larger format meetings at all, but we will format them differently if we do that way.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a good report. It's a complex report, and it made me think about a town hall that many of us attended and many public didn't. And it kind of troubled me. I think it was the garbage policy that we were working on. You know, a really big thing. It's going to affect everybody in the county, and yet we generated more staff and councillors than we did people coming through the door, sadly, because when it plays through, we're going to get a lot of challenges, a lot of complaints, a lot of upset people. So my question then really was, using that as an example, how do you measure success in your communications? Because I think we weren't successful that night. We've been successful many, many more times in other things. Perhaps staff can help us on that one.
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, it is certainly difficult to use typical metrics as far as how many participants or how many surveys were completed. It's difficult to compare those across projects. So what our goal is to focus on meaningful engagement, in which case something like that affects the community as a whole. We would try to front load education first and foremost when we know these important projects are coming up, so that we reach as many community members as we possibly can with that. And then again, it's potentially having more than one of those in-person meetings. So we may have to reiterate a ton of information. You may have to answer a lot of duplicate questions, but being able to offer several different locations at different times may help make those meetings a little bit more attainable for the public.
Thank you very much for that answer. And it sort of made me think then that, just to use the example I gave before, that when we came out of that session, did we reflect and say, well, what do we do now? Because we know it's really important. We know people really need to know this. So what can we do more to make sure the message gets across and we don't get inundated in 2027 when Matt DeHont comes with a new contract that costs us, you know, $200 more a year each person. So,
through the chair to Councillor Bell, that is one thing that we have included into the framework is step 5 in that planning process is continuous improvement and evaluation. So we would seek to, after those in-person or any type of engagement really, look to the public for their thoughts on how that engagement went, and also look to staff to see what we can improve, what lessons we may have learned, what we did well certainly, but what can we improve upon. So that is built into the framework.
good, thank you. Just to end on a positive note, I went to the open house for the Brant Sports Complex expansion. I went to the Solap's version of that, and Kathy was telling me that they've had 900 responses to that, which I find really amazing. That might be a problem of plenty.
Any more questions? Comments? The only comment I got is, and I kind of like this, we had one here in Kanesville here a few weeks ago for the Salt Springs Road. I would say 98% were happy with the format. A couple were grumbly when they went out the door, and I expected that from those people. And that doesn't matter. You're not going to please everybody. But at least I look at it as if when you've got 4 or 5 staff there around and one person can talk to that staff person or whoever staff they want, they're going to get probably a more concise answer than somebody screaming it out from the audience and whatnot like that. And it's a lot more orderly. So I fully support it. Any more questions? Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Questions? Councilor McAlpine.
We have a lot of people working remotely. Approximately how many are working remotely? Is it 212 approximately employees we have that are to be housed?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. And how many are working remotely right now at this point?
I don't know if we have an exact number, but quite a number are. Maybe not fully remotely, not 5 days a week. Maybe some are 1 day a week, some are 2, 3, 4, and a few are roughly 5 days a week. But it is hard to put a number on it.
So do we know approximately how much of a shortage we have for our staff then?
Through Mr. Chair, I would agree with Mark, first of all, that I think most people will use the flexibility occasionally. I think we have very, very few, though, who are full-time at home.
Right.
I think anecdotally, most people would like to be in the office more, but we don't have the room to accommodate everyone. I think the bigger problem is that we don't have, so for example, if we had 3 spaces open, 3 people can come in, but the issue might be that it's a team of 5 who wants to meet. So it's more the collaboration with team members that becomes a problem when we're trying to accommodate everybody in the office. And I'll say that I don't think moving on this is, I don't think we're at a critical juncture. The impetus behind the study was to make sure that we're making educated and fiscally responsible decisions with our existing buildings over the next number of years if we're moving towards a direction of a consolidated office. So again, it's not something that I think we need to rush on, but like I said, I think we'll make different decisions with how we manage our existing facilities if we're going to be moving towards that model.
Through the chair, so this option 2 is the facility that's an estimated $35 million. I ask, is this included in our long-term financial plan? I would suspect, based on my previous information of how that plan works, the answer would be no, because that is only previously approved projects. And as a sort of a related question, does that mean we're committing to that $35 million tonight, given that if it's not in our long-term financial plan, I think we ought to see it in there first before we make those decisions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's not in the long-term financial plan, and I would fully expect if we were going to go down that route and council approves that option, that it would be offset by our existing buildings. So that's why it's the recommendation in terms of net cost. We would surplus the existing buildings and then build one new facility. But no, the idea is if council again approves that option, staff will go away and do the work necessary to really flesh out that plan and come back with a model. Again, it's expected to be a sort of more medium to long-term option now.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll tell you right now, I don't like the price tag that was in the report, but I guess that's not written in stone either. But I thought, through Mr. Chair, that Mark did a really good job of laying out the whys and very logical, and it makes a lot of sense. I agree with him. I think we need it. But in the report, he says Burford's not really an appropriate spot, and so we should go to Paris. And I don't know if this is a question or not, but have we thought about somewhere else? And my thinking is possibly beside the OPP station. We do own the land there. We should have enough land. It's good access for a lot of people in Ward 5, obviously Ward 4, and huge parts of Paris. So any thoughts to that? Not maybe directly downtown Paris, but maybe somewhere out there.
Sure. Through the chair, I think that would be part of the next step of this study, is starting to look at different sites and evaluating which ones are most to least preferred, and that would probably be one of them.
Chambers?
I don't know where to begin on this one. I can't think of a worse time for this report to be landing on our table, not days after we went through another very similar thing with the library and the Old Town Hall, which took years and years, expenses and expenses and expenses, not thousands of dollars, but hundreds of thousands of dollars. and then we end up 6 years or 7 years or 8 years or 9 years down the line and we pull the plug. This is a huge, huge commitment for the council to make. I was on the original accommodation when we amalgamated. That was, we had the Paris town or the arena filled with people wild about this kind of stuff. If you expect to vote tonight to move forward with this $31 million project, to develop an implementation plan, and all the kind of stuff we would do, this really takes some thought. And at best, it should be tabled because it's not a bad idea. But we're already now talking, we should put it by the police station. Well, that's a pretty, and I don't, maybe we should put it in Canesville. Maybe we should put it in hello, do some thinking about this because the people will really want to be involved in this. And if you make the decision tonight to move forward, I cannot, we are looked at as being incompetent because of the last little exercise we went through last week, because we spent so much money and ended up doing nothing. And now you want to move on an accommodation study where we put all the offices in one location. It's mind-boggling, and it seems so simple. I mean, what are we doing here? And we have a long-term financial plan that was tabled a couple weeks ago, and this isn't even in it. Hello, isn't that a long-term financial commitment? What are we doing here? I'm stunned by the superficial nature that this is being put forward. I can't accept it. I'll move to table it till we have a little bit of time to think about it. I've had 4 days to stew about this, and I'm not getting any happier about it. To take all of the offices and put them on one site, wherever that site is, and spend the money to do that, and then try and divest all the other property. It sounds easy, but you go out and you talk to the people in your coffee shop tomorrow morning and tell them we're going to close all the offices and build a new one. There will be some pushback on this one. Don't kid yourself. If there was pushback on the library project, there will be a lot of pushback on this project. Just the very determination of location is a minefield of public relations and pissed off people like you won't believe. If you take it outside of Paris, the people outside in Paris won't want it there, and the people it's just mind-boggling. Slow down on this one. We don't need it right now. Let's get our finances in order. Let's take a few months to look at our long-term financial plan. Let's get through the budget of this year, which we're looking at 6 or 7% without any decision packages. Plus, we're looking at a capital commitment next year of $27 million. It's almost twice as much as this year. This is mind-boggling. I can't accept it, and it's. Sorry, I'm on a rant, but I can't explain this one to the people. And we need to show the leadership. Someone needs to show the leadership on this council that we have to get our finances in order, because we should have learned last week about what happens with huge projects if we don't have a commitment to finish it and find the money to pay for it. I'll move to table this report when everybody else has a chance to stand up and say how great it is.
I'll accept that after we get discussion. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor Chambers, for stealing all those, well, almost all I was going to say. Last week's discussion about the library, it didn't matter which project was at that time. I am really concerned that we are spending more than we can afford, and this just adds to it. But before Alison jumps in, let me say, I think Alison has done what we asked her to do. She came with a report in April last year. We said, go ahead and do it. She's brought forward a proposal, and I think it's a solid proposal, but we can't just deal with it in isolation from our overall financial position. What Alison did is she showed the facts that lie behind the decisions that we have to make. We are a growing community. We are a growing corporation. We need to accommodate our people, and we can't at the moment, or we can at the moment, but we won't be able to going forward. So it's going to take time to get the right choice of location. It's going to take time to get the right choice of solution. We should not just ignore this report, but I think, as Councillor Chambers says, we should take a bit more time in it. But first and foremost, we should understand our financial position, or how far into debt we want to go as an organisation, because this is just one more piece that, if this had come last week, I'd be saying the same about the library with the same reasoning. We are just running away. My wife said, don't say this. We have to stop spending like a drunken sailor. And that's, it is really, we're really in a precarious position now. But it's a very difficult time, and we need just to go slowly and make decisions that don't cause us problems down the road. That's the whole idea of a long-term financial plan, that we see today the implications, the decisions we take down the road. I don't want a legacy of this council to be that they just spent and drove the county almost into bankruptcy. I don't want to do that. So maybe this is a conversation more for Thursday when we talk about the budget for this year, because it will be a part of that conversation. But we do need to step very warily through this.
Mr. Mayor, were you going to make a comment?
I was going to second Councillor Chambers. I think conversation should stop. I'm just quite curious that we.
Okay, Alison wants to say something.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I want to make a clarification. There is no recommendation on the floor tonight to spend any money or commit to any money. The point of bringing this forward tonight was more so we can manage how we manage our existing facilities based on what a long-term plan is. So I'm not, if I need to accommodate staff in 10 years in a facility, I'm going to approach that very differently in our existing facilities if our ultimate long-term plan is to get to a consolidated build. So by no means am I suggesting that this go in the budget right now and that's something we commit to in the short term. The point is to get more direction on how we manage the next several years as we're growing and developing policies for where our staff go. How do we approach that? But it's certainly not a recommendation to put any money, let alone 31 million in the budget.
Councillor McAlpine.
Yeah, I'd still like to step back just for a month or two until we have because nobody in the community has a clue that we're thinking about this, I don't think, at this point. So I think, and part of the reasoning that didn't come up maybe is, and this may be what Chambers is alluding to, is that part of the idea of having multiple locations for the facilities is also looking at spreading the wealth around the community too, and then just having the opportunity for staff to be outside of just Paris and having an idea of what's going on in the other communities on a day-to-day basis. So I think there's other things that we need to look at. I'm not sure, like Wincy Mills, for instance, there's an opportunity there, I understand, to rent more room. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is, but that's exactly my point. Do we try to reconfigure our existing space? Do I lease more space at Wincy Mills? It's those kinds of decisions that, over the next 5 years, I think we're going to have to make. But again, I would approach those very differently based on what our long-term goal is, and that could be 10 plus years. Like I said, I don't think it's a rush to go there, but our short-term decisions are affected by our long-term goals, and I think that's more the point of bringing this forward.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is, in the short term, we might want to lease the extra room to get us through so that we can think about and work through this project more thoroughly and really dig into it and get public engagement in this process. Because yeah, I agree. Like I think I get hung out to dry based on conversations from last week. So
Before I go any further, one comment I did get after last week's meeting, the next day or the next couple days was, a couple councilors need to put the microphone in front of them, and one of them is Councilor Bell and one of them is Councilor McAlpine. The audience, the people that were watching it on Zoom or whatever it's called, said they could not hear Councilor Bell and Councilor McAlpine, and that is the comments that they were told to me. They know that you were speaking, but they could not quite hear you because your microphones are to the side. So if you could pull them into the center to you, I would appreciate that so everybody can hear. Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat my story?
I
Brian?
want to hear you, Councilor Bell, anytime. That's why you and I get along so well. But it does make a difference because they can't always pick it up on audio. Because that comment was made to me quite clearly. Could not hear Councilor Bell or Councilor McAlpine. Who's next? Councilor Lucas.
Through you, the chair, to Allison, more likely. I presume as part of this process, public engagement will be done throughout this. Like that's as we continue with the study and continue with implementation, public engagements on such as where it's going to be, so on and so forth, would be included.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly if we were to reach that point, there would be consultation. Again, I wouldn't anticipate that for a number of years, and we certainly wouldn't do it if council wasn't supportive of us going in that direction. Again, it's more looking at what our long-term direction is. If we're not going to go in that direction, then there would be no public consultation on it.
Any more questions? Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in light of maybe a deferral motion, my question is through you to Allison. I mean, if we read through the recommendation, one of the recommendations is that a county project team continues to develop an implementation plan to accommodate staff in the interim and to explore opportunities for the existing facilities. You don't need a recommendation from council to continue that, do you?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, and that is something that we consistently do. Again, it's more how much do we continue to invest in our existing facilities, or do we do sort of minimal investment if in 10 years we're going to be looking at a different plan. If the permanent plan right now is to not explore a consolidated office, then that's fine too. But again, we would approach those potential renovations in the coming years probably a little bit differently.
Okay, yeah, and I understand. So, okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Back to you, Councilor Chambers.
Yeah, I am going to move that the report be received and that the report be tabled at this time. And just before I move that, what I think will happen if this passes in this state, people will read this, and the county council directs staff to proceed with option 2 to accommodate staff at a new consolidated administration at a central location. What they will read into that is the council's now going to build a big new fancy building. That's not the way to start the project, and that will panic them just after what we went through last week. So I'll move that the report be received and it be tabled for further review and leave it at that. And when we get through the budget, we get a handle on the long-term finances, then we can take the next step. But if you go and pass this resolution tonight, people will be ticked off because they don't know what's going on and they'll assume the worst. So I'll move that we receive it and it be tabled.
Lucas.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just as a question to staff or perhaps Councilor Chambers, in terms of tabling, does that need an end date to it, a date when it's coming back, or?
If I would have said tabled indefinitely, which I almost did, then it would be never seen again. But in order for it to come back, someone would have to move that it be back, and that could be based on the recommendation from staff, that kind of stuff. But let's get through the budget, get a handle on the long-term financial plan, and then start talking about multi-million dollar projects of consolidation. And I know it's not saying that we're going to do it, but once you start it and you've got a price tag of 31 million, when are you going to turn the corner? It's not going to be 2 million, it'll be maybe more.
Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, I guess just a comment. I support the idea to table it, but I also, what I'm hearing from the CAO is we do have an issue with the accommodation of staff currently. So would it be reasonable to suggest even maybe halfway through the year it come back, give us a few months to get a handle on things? Because I think she's looking for direction on how she should proceed in making sure that there's appropriate space for our staff. So regardless of what that is and what path we decide to choose, I feel like we probably should address that sooner than too, like, not then I wouldn't want to leave it too long is what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I can make a suggestion that we can look at as sort of 5-year estimate of what we think we'll need in terms of you know, any adjustments to our current space. You know, I'm not sure that most of that I think we have planned, at least for the shorter term. I don't know how far that goes out, but we can bring something back, say at September policy, in terms of what that looks like for our existing facilities.
Go ahead, Steve.
Through the chair, I support the deferral as well, and I obviously this is a subject we do have to look at. The timing of this is unfortunate, as was noted before. I've already had one person contact me today saying, "Oh, so is this the new plan for the old town hall?" And it's just coincidental timing and coincidental numbers of millions of dollars. But it's the optics of it are bad, and I respect the staff needs some direction, and I think it's clear that Allison is going to have to limp through our current accommodations for the next few years. There's absolutely nothing that would suggest that a solution is going to appear soon. So things like leases at the Wincy Mills or whatever the other solutions are, I think there should be no hesitation towards those. But we do have to look at this later after more opportunity to digest it. And it has to be baked into the long-term financial plan, even as a placeholder at some, because it's one of those big projects, right? And we have lots of them. So those are my 2 cents. Thanks.
Councilor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I won't be supporting the deferral. I think we're choosing to kind of bury our heads in the sand here by not dealing with the problem that we do have. And if there was specific direction on when this may come back, or tying it specifically to the long-term financial plan, or some sort of specifics on how and when we plan to bring this back, then I might be more supportive. But given that it's relatively non-specific right now on how we plan to bring this back and when we choose to deal with it, I can't be supportive of it.
Councilor Chambers.
I just want to say one more thing, and then we can vote on the tabling. That these kind of projects, they're not 1 or 2 year projects. Twin Pad Arena took 10 years. Police station took 10 years. A library is maybe going to take 20 years by the looks of things. Any major project, the original accommodations took about 7 years. So you're going to have to make adjustments for what you have and live with what that anyway, whether you pass this tonight or not. So you're going to have to look at what you're going to be doing in the meantime, which could be 5, 6, 7 years at the earliest, I would think, because it's just history shows that these kind of projects, they don't happen overnight. Just look at the police station, Twin Pad, library, and all the rest. It's a multi-year project, even if you decided to move today, because there'll be pushback. So you're going to have to make adjustments with the accommodations as you go forward anyway for up to 6 or 7 years. So we're going to have to do something, but this isn't the answer.
Councilor Miller, you good on the beach? Good. I'm gonna call the question. Everybody understand what what's on the floor? Deferral. Councilor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor Oakley is. I think we need to give a time on this one. It doesn't mean it has to be next month, but we will finish the budget in the next month. I think if staff have a little longer than that, I would say 2 more cycles, come back with an update on this, because it's not going away, and the number of people coming into our corporation is growing. That's going to happen. So we should face up to it. It's a reality. It's a need of the community. It's not a want.
Councilor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think CEO Allison did say September timeframe that she was going to come back with reports as to what's required over the next, up to 5 years. So I'm thinking there's kind of a timeline right there. I don't think it'll be a couple cycles. I mean, it may be for policy because we're every other month or whatever, but she did state September timeframe.
You want to wait till the mayor comes back? Yeah, you said mayor seconded, so I want to wait till he comes back. Councilor Chambers.
If you want to soften that a little bit, you could it be tabled for further review with regular updates from staff, and then that gives them the opportunity to at any time bring forward any information so that it doesn't die and never be seen again. It's just in abeyance until we learn more.
Read it back when the mayor comes back. Clerk will read it back when the mayor gets back in place.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation would be as follows: that RPT-002-0-25 County of Brant's Municipal Accommodation Study -M Maxwell be received as information, and that RPT-002-0-25 County of Brant Municipal Accommodation Study -M Maxwell be tabled for further review and include regular updates from staff if necessary.
Everybody copacetic? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? No, 2 noted. Thank you. No communications listed. Allison, your update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have these divided up by department. Again, this list gets longer every time doing these meetings quarterly, but I want to congratulate, I think most of you know this, but Dan Nemizniak is the new manager of development planning. And I think you've, again, all seen Dan since that happened. The Canesville secondary planning is underway, and an update will be coming forward soon. Again, I think most of you have seen this, but 2 new schools have been announced in Paris, one for the Grand Erie District School Board and one for the Brant Haldeman Norfolk Catholic District School Board. And again, we'll have more on the locations of those sites coming forward. Policy planning is working on completing the housing needs assessment. The new building code has come into effect as of January 1st. And the commenting period for the development and engineering standards is closed, and staff are now working through almost 200 suggested amendments to that. For emergency and protective services, the new paramedic headquarters project phase 1 administration space is underway, and it is on schedule, and it's scheduled for completion in July. Phase 2 construction for the garage space is expected to start the end of March. Pre-qualification of contractors for the North Paris Fire Station is closed with bids under review. The tender is targeted for release by the end of March. And again, I saw a lot of people share this. So automated speed enforcement launched this week. Again, I think most of you saw that. On strategic initiatives, Via Transportation, who is our service provider for Brant, is going to be attending a committee meeting in March to provide council with a 2024 transit year in review presentation. I think that'll be good given how long they've been up and running. They've been great at providing data that we sorely needed. So looking forward to that. We did exceed our revenue target of $100,000 from user fares in 2024. So again, it's good news that we're getting uptake on that. The diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy is under development and expected to be before council in April. The community safety and well-being plan is also under development and expected to be before council in May or June. Staff are working with a consultant to enhance accessibility with local businesses. We did get a funding grant from Enabling Change, and the grant was $75,000, so staff are working on that now. The Wilkin Family Community Center fundraising campaign is 95% complete. Our goal was $400,000. $15,000 remains to be raised, so we're close. And I would like to thank all the donors for the generous donations to date. The museum sustainability plan is underway, and staff are looking forward to engaging with local museum staff and volunteers to offer support. Investment attraction strategy is underway for the Highway 403 Rest Acres Road employment lands, if we can get MTO on board. Throw that out there. Hopefully they're actually listening to our delegations that we're putting forward. Special event policy is under review for improvements to the process, and that will be coming forward shortly. For community services, again, congratulations to Keith Roswell. He started his new role as manager of facilities and parks January 1st. Consultation for Arlington Meadows Subdivision Park begins tomorrow evening. Hopefully everybody's seen that notification. The Brant Sports Complex expansion community and stakeholder consultation is underway. The consulting team is preparing design options and associated budget estimates to accompany a staff report to the March 18th Admin and Ops Committee. A grant funding application will follow subject to council approval and decision that night. North of the Nith, stakeholder and community consultation is complete, and we're currently reviewing feedback. The Burford Skate Park opened the week of November 11th, 2024, and the final landscaping will be completed in the spring. Drury Street Park in Paris reopened the week of November 11th also. Paris Skate Park expansion construction has started and is to be completed in the spring, weather permitting. For corporate services, they've been pretty slow with budget, so not much besides budget is happening, but community grant intake open today through the Brant Community Foundation. In operations, the gas installation has been proceeding on Grand River Street North in advance of the full downtown dig. Tenders for the downtown dig will be going to the February 25th council meeting, and we're hoping that contractor availability and timing will bring us some good prices, especially with everything going on right now. And projects are being tendered for 2025 construction. So far, again, the prices seem good. The next big project to go out is the 3 roundabouts for Grand River Street North, and that's at Watts Bond, Hartley, and Scott. And that concludes my update, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and the general managers are also here.
Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Allison. You mentioned about the gas on Grand River Street North, and the company is doing its ACON. Not too often we hear the good stuff, so I'm going to bring back 2 people have actually approached me, stating the fact of how courteous and accommodating they were. Actually, one of them was a senior citizen, and one of the guys actually helped her up and helped her, go across where they were working and stuff like that. So as I say, we don't hear the positives too often, but I definitely wanted to, 2 different people that, I don't know if they know each other or whatever, but it was within 3 days. I had 2 reports that they understand that they have to do this job, but they were very impressed with how accommodating they were and courteous. I wanted to make that note.
Any more questions for Allison? New business. Councilor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a quick update. Since our council meeting was pretty busy last week, I thought it was best to just wait and share this evening. But at the recent Roma conference, the Government Relations Committee, as well as some of the other councillors in attendance, did attend a number of delegations, and Allison did allude to one with the MTO. We met with MTO, Ministry of Health, Indigenous Affairs, and Children, Family, and Social Services. And all 4 of our county delegations were well received. We had positive feelings coming out of all of those meetings. So now we wait to see if anything comes from any of those meetings. With SCORE, we also had a number of delegations. I sat in, and most of us, I think that were there, sat in on OMAFA, which is the Agriculture, Farming, and Agribusiness. There was one with Rural Affairs, and then with a number of the opposition parties as well. And again, those were positive meetings. So now that the writs have been drawn up and there's an election underway, we'll see if work continues on some of the issues we brought forward. But all things considered, the meetings all went well. We had positive feelings coming out of them, and if anyone has suggestions for delegations for any of the upcoming conferences, or potentially a day at Queen's Park, we've been kind of thinking about maybe doing that, then feel free to send them our way, and we'll take a look at them at the next Government Relations Committee meeting.
Thank you, Jen. Councilor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And along the same lines as Councilor Kyle, I didn't want to bring up the council because it was a long meeting, but it's the Roma delegations. And I guess I missed that part of when we approved the Government Relations Committee, that it was only Government Relations Committee members that attend those delegations. Now, I know Councilor Bell was part of the one, but outside of that, it was everybody on the Government Relations Committee. So my bad for missing that, as pointed out by Allison. But I would like to see maybe a better process, and I'll give you an example of why. Take the delegation to the MTO regarding the Bishopsgate interchange. We had 3 councillors there. 2 of the ward councillors were there. We weren't put on with the delegation. Councillor Coleman was there. He's got more history with this than anybody around this table. I mean, he yelled at Caroline Mulrooney back in the day at one of those delegations. So he has a lot of history with that. So I'm just wondering how can we improve on that, where we have an opportunity to say you have a delegation with the minister on a topic that say maybe near and dear to our hearts. How do we go about improving the process of us being part of that delegation before we go to the conference? Because I know if I'm part of a delegation, I do like to put on the jacket and tie. Obviously, I didn't for Roma because I see that wasn't part of any of the delegations. So I'm just wondering, given that the Government Relations Committee is meeting, I think it's next week, I'm just wondering if this could be an item of or topic of discussion for them coming up. And, like you say, how could we maybe kind of make this a little bit better?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I would foresee the same process as we did for Roma in terms of a report coming forward from the Government Relations Committee on a sort of agreed upon delegations that at least we're going to request. And my apologies if that wasn't made clear process-wise. And then when it comes to council, that would be the time when that report comes ahead of the conference itself. That would be the time to indicate interest in attending, noting that it was a bit of a scramble. I'm not going to lie. For Roma, we were getting, I think, the Thursday afternoon before the conference started, we were getting accepted for delegation. So it was a bit of a scramble to get the materials and organization and timing together. But for clarification, and again, I apologize if that wasn't clear, when that report ahead of any conference comes to council, that would be my hope, is that anyone who's interested in attending along with the Government Relations Committee members would indicate it at that time, and then I can make those appropriate arrangements. It wasn't so much of an issue with Roma, but certainly with AMO, I know they do restrict the number of people in the room. So they have been asking us for us to confirm and keep the numbers limited.
Okay, I appreciate the answer.
Councilor Chambers?
Yeah, just my comments on that situation is the Government Relations Committee doesn't necessarily have to be the only ones making the presentations. It could be in relation to the Bishopsgate interchange, it could be the two ward councillors. The Government Relations Committee can set it up, but perhaps it should be, in some cases, people that have an interest and a direct stake in that rather than the Government Relations Committee. So I don't think it was the desire of when we set at least it wasn't my desire to exclude members of council from making presentations if indeed they have an interest or an expertise in the matter. You have to be careful when you, and again, this is my opinion, but you have to be careful when you do these delegations that you don't swamp the room. Like 2 or 3 or 4 people, the mayor should be there always if he can, but you don't want 10 people in the room if 2 people will do. You have a better one-on-one. The best presentation I ever made was to the Minister of Education. It was just me and her. And it's so these presentations there's an art to them and some experience, and the more you do, the more experience you get, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, and it shouldn't be just the Government Relations Committee making delegations. I think that is perhaps unfair to the committee and maybe unfair to the other councillors as well.
Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a few comments on this. Yeah, I certainly don't think it was the Government Relations Committee intent to exclude anyone. Certainly, and acknowledging, of course, that the AMO delegations were indicating that they would like to restrict numbers. In terms of going on the SCORE delegations, I've never been refused entry into a room, and I imagine we'd find a similar thing with our own if councillors did want to attend, even if they weren't specifically on the list. You know, if you show up and you can't get in, then so be it. Or you can discuss with the people who are on the list and swap in and out at that moment. But certainly, along with Councillor Chambers is saying, you know, my experience of the conferences since being on the committee, I don't see much of the conference outside of the delegation room. So certainly, yeah, if other folks want to jump in, more than happy to tag out if need be, if there's a limited space.
Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, along the same lines as Councillor Oakley, and just to clarify, the Government Relations Committee, we're simply the group that takes the ideas and tries to streamline and make sure that the meetings get set up. But there was never any intent to exclude any councillors that wanted to attend. And absolutely, if there's someone that knows more about something than me or anyone else on the committee, then we need to have those people there. So I think if there's anyone that ever wants to participate, please let us know, because I think the default is to the Government Relations Committee if we're successful in getting that delegation. So we need people there. The mayor, of course, needs to be there. But if there's any interest in any of the topics with any of the ministries we are successful in getting a meeting with, then we would like those people there, and any of us are happy to step aside if there is a limit, if there's someone that's more qualified to be there.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, through the chair, just on this topic, I think this conference was very loosey-goosey. It wasn't very organized, really. And in all fairness, our clerks were all new, putting the binders together and things for us. So there wasn't a lot of stuff that we usually have, like directions and maps and all kinds of other things that we usually have to make it easy for us to maneuver the convention. We didn't have it this year. And usually we get it, some of us get it through SCORE, or we get it through Roma, Western Wardens, but we didn't have any from years. Get a big one with all the maps and things. So it was loosey-goosey. And you're right, sometimes you can just put your name on the list, but the lists are there for a reason. They really do like to know who's going to be in the room with the ministers. I've seen some of the delegations go wrong, very wrong, and they need to fall back on that list and whose names are on them. But Councillor Chambers is right. There is an art to a delegation, and never assume that a delegation is a meeting. And when we're doing correspondence, you know, we can't say that we had a meeting with anyone because we never had a meeting. This is what we had problems with before. We're in a delegation that lasts, I don't know, 7 minutes before they knock on the door. So we can never say that we've had a meeting because they would expect more results from an actual meeting with a minister. So we do have ministers meeting with, I met with a couple of them on my own before a delegation this year. So there are things happening in corners at these conventions, and it's supposed to happen that way so that when you get into the meeting, you don't waste time on introducing people and saying who's in the room. And, you know, there's nothing but time to waste when there's 12 people on our side of the table. It does take up a lot of room just telling everyone who everyone is. So when you're talking a delegation and you know you only have that many minutes, it's very important to make sure there's a strategy to speak to the ministers.
Councilor Chambers.
And while we're on it, there is another avenue that we've never really taken advantage of. And this year I've never seen a conference with so many ministers at the question period. And the Government Relations Committee and Council can take advantage of that by standing at the microphone and asking a minister a question when all the ministers are there and all the people are in the room too. That's very effective in some cases. You can't be specific, but it can be a general question. But I was actually quite impressed with the ministers at the conference at the question period, which sometimes I've seen there's only been 4 or 5. And they had two rows. I didn't think there was that many ministers of the Crown.
I think one reason was that, Mr. Chambers, was that they knew our election was coming very shortly. The only thing in comment I have on it is, and I know where Councilor Miller is coming from, is that when we received our package on the Friday, and it just listed 2 members of council, and I think that's what, and the mayor, and I think that's what maybe prompted this discussion, that the rest of us went down there and what the hell are we going for? I always said, I learn more in the foyer than I ever do sitting in the meeting. So that's where you get your bread and butter from. But I think if there's 5 councilors going, 5 councilors should be on the package names. Simple as that. Don't all have to go under the delegation. I couldn't make all the delegations, but I did enjoy going to the Minister of Aboriginal. That was good. And I thought that was a good meeting that we did have with him this time. So, any more discussion on this? Councilor Garno, sorry.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. And following on that, I think those who attended the conference but weren't in the delegations were feeling left out. As someone whose circumstances didn't allow them to attend the conference, I didn't receive any of the information. So perhaps if we could see that the delegation materials, I could be wrong, but I don't recall seeing the detailed information other than SCORE. So I'm feeling even more at a disadvantage in this discussion this evening.
Any more discussion? We beat this one up pretty good. So nothing in camera. Next meeting, May 6th, 2025.